The glimmering mansion on the edge of Crestwood Hills was a palace of glass and steel. Inside lived Harold Kingsley, one of the wealthiest men in the state, a tycoon whose fortune had been built on shipping lines, oil refineries, and a chain of luxury resorts scattered across the globe. But despite the towering success and unimaginable riches, Harold Kingsley carried a burden heavier than any empire. His only daughter, Isabella, had been mute since birth. Isabella was 20 years old, graceful as a swan, with deep blue eyes that could speak more than 1,000 words ever could. Her silence had become both her curse and her gift. She could never join her peers in laughter or conversation, yet her quiet presence had an almost angelic calm. She painted with astonishing skill, her canvases often auctioned for charities, and she played the piano with haunting beauty, music flowing from her fingers as though she were pouring her soul into every note. Still, Harold's heart ached every time he looked at her. He had spent millions consulting the finest doctors, hiring speech therapists, traveling across continents to seek healers and specialists. None of them succeeded. The verdict was always the same. Her vocal cords were functional, her brain was healthy, but some invisible barrier prevented her from speaking. Science couldn't explain it, and medicine couldn't fix it. At social gatherings, Harold's rivals would whisper, "What's the use of all that wealth if his only child can't even utter a word?" Isabella, sensitive to every glance, would retreat to her quiet corner, smiling politely while her heart longed to speak, to laugh, to sing. But fate had its own mysterious plan. One summer evening, Isabella wandered into the lush gardens behind the mansion. The sun was dipping low, staining the sky crimson and gold. She often found solace here, among the roses, fountains, and marble statues. Her sketchbook rested on her lap as she painted the dying light across the horizon. As she worked, a rustle drew her attention. From the shadows of the trees emerged an old woman, hunched yet dignified, dressed in a faded cloak of deep green. Her hair was silver, her eyes a strange shade of amber, almost glowing in the twilight. Isabella startled, glancing around for the guards, but strangely, no one was in sight. She pointed toward the mansion, as if to signal the woman she was trespassing. The old woman smiled knowingly. "Do not fear me, child. I am not here to harm you." Isabella frowned, gesturing questioningly with her hands. The woman tilted her head. "Ah, yes, you cannot speak." Those words hit Isabella like a thunderclap. How did this stranger know? Before she could retreat, the woman slowly pulled out a small crystal vial from within her cloak. Inside shimmered a liquid unlike anything Isabella had ever seen, glowing faintly blue, swirling as though alive. "This," the woman whispered, "is not from your world. It is rare, ancient, and powerful. A single sip can awaken what lies dormant within." She stepped closer, holding the vial out. "It can give you what you desire most." Isabella's heart hammered. Could this mean her voice? Could this mean freedom from her silence? She stared into the woman's amber eyes, searching for deceit, but found only calm assurance. Her logical mind screamed caution. She had read enough fairy tales to know that mysterious potions came with a price. Yet something deep within her urged her forward. Perhaps it was hope, desperate and reckless. The woman placed the vial into Isabella's trembling hand. "When you are ready, drink. But remember, child, what is awakened can never be undone." And with that, the woman stepped back into the shadows. By the time Isabella gathered her wits, the woman was gone, leaving only the vial glimmering in her palm. That night, Isabella hid the vial in her bedside drawer. She barely slept, her thoughts a storm of longing and fear. What if it was poison? What if it was magic? What if it truly gave her a voice? The next morning, her father entered her room. "Good morning, my dove," Harold greeted, kissing her forehead. She smiled, as she always did, but he noticed the weariness in her eyes. "You're not sleeping well again." She shook her head gently. Harold sighed and sat beside her. "If I could give up everything, every ship, every refinery, every coin, to hear you say just one word, I would." His voice cracked with emotion. Tears welled in Isabella's eyes. She wished she could scream, "Father, I love you." But her lips betrayed her, remaining locked in silence. After he left, she clutched the vial tightly. She couldn't wait any longer. With trembling hands, she uncorked the vial. The liquid glowed brighter in the morning light. Slowly, she raised it to her lips. The first drop touched her tongue, cool, electric, almost burning, and she swallowed. At once, fire spread through her chest. Her throat tightened, her breath hitched. She gasped, clutching her neck, collapsing onto the bed. Her vision blurred. Then, through the chaos, a sound erupted. Not a whisper, not a gasp, but a clear, raw cry. Her cry. For the first time in her life, Isabella had spoken. And it was only the beginning. The cry startled the birds perched outside Isabella's window. She sat frozen, her hands pressed against her lips. The sound had been real, her voice, raw and unshaped, but her own. 1,000 emotions clashed inside her: fear, wonder, joy. Can it be true? She whispered hoarsely, her throat aching. The words cracked like fragile glass, but they were words nonetheless. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she forced another, trembling sentence. I can speak. The reality struck her like a lightning bolt. The impossible had happened. Hours later, she found herself pacing the length of her room, practicing words. She stumbled, her voice rasping, but every utterance felt like a miracle. She laughed, a shaky, childlike laugh that echoed against the walls. For 20 years, silence had been her prison. Now, every syllable was a key to freedom. But excitement quickly tangled with dread. How would she explain this to her father? To the staff? To the world? No one would believe the truth of the mysterious woman and the glowing vial. And deep inside, a warning rang like a bell: what is awakened can never be undone. That evening, she decided to test her gift. When Harold entered her room, she stood up straight, her heart hammering. "Good evening, father," she whispered. The glass of wine he carried slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. His face drained of color, his breath caught. "Isabella." His voice was barely a whisper. You spoke." Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded, then forced another sentence. "Yes, father, I can speak now." For a moment, he simply stared, as if his entire world had tilted on its axis. Then, like a man breaking free of chains, he collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Years of helplessness, frustration, and longing poured out of him. "My dove, my angel," he stammered. How is this possible? Doctors said. They said it could never happen." Isabella couldn't tell him the truth. "Not yet." She shook her head gently. I don't know," she said softly. "It just happened." Harold kissed her forehead again and again, weeping with joy. For the first time in decades, hope burned in his heart like fire. He called for the doctors, the staff, everyone in the mansion to witness the miracle. News spread like wildfire. By the next morning, reporters swarmed outside the Kingsley estate. "Millionaire's mute daughter speaks for the first time in 20 years. Screamed the headlines. Specialists examined her, baffled but delighted. "Her vocal cords are perfectly functional," one remarked. "It's as if something locked them away all these years, and now that barrier is gone." Harold spared no expense celebrating the miracle. A grand party was arranged at the mansion, attended by dignitaries, celebrities, and politicians. Isabella became the center of attention, her every word cherished as if it were gold. But beneath the glamour, a shadow stirred in her heart. Because with her newfound voice came something else, something she couldn't explain. It started small. During the party, as she mingled awkwardly with guests, she noticed snippets of thought, whispers that weren't spoken aloud. A man shook her hand politely, but in her mind, she heard him scoff, "Another spoiled heiress." She gasped, pulling her hand away. The man blinked, confused, but she forced a smile to cover her shock. Later, while dancing, a young woman complimented her dress, but Isabella heard the venom behind her smile. "She thinks she's special just because she can talk now." Isabella's hands trembled as she realized what was happening. The potion had not only given her voice, it had opened a door to something else, something dangerous. She could hear thoughts. After the guests departed and the mansion fell silent, Isabella rushed to her mirror. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, staring into her reflection. Her voice quivered, but the words were clear. "Why can I hear them?" She remembered the old woman's warning. What is awakened can never be undone. Her breath caught as a thought suddenly pierced her mind, one that wasn't her own. It was Harold's, drifting faintly from across the hall. She must never know the truth about her mother. Isabella staggered backward. "Mother," she whispered. Her chest tightened. Her mother had died when Isabella was an infant, or so Harold had always told her. What truth was he hiding? Her newfound gift was no longer just a miracle, it was a key to secrets buried deep in shadows. The following days grew stranger. The voices in people's minds were everywhere. Some were kind, some cruel, most filled with fears they never voiced aloud. The noise often overwhelmed her, leaving her dizzy and disoriented. But what haunted her most was her father's recurring thought: if she ever discovers the past, everything will be lost. The words gnawed at her like a parasite. What past? What was so dangerous that he had hidden it all her life? One night, restless and unable to sleep, Isabella left her room and tiptoed through the mansion's long corridors. She reached her father's study, the one place always locked, always forbidden. But now, her determination was iron. She had a voice, she had the power to hear truth, and she would use both to uncover the mystery. With trembling fingers, she tried the door. To her shock, it was unlocked. Slowly, she entered. The room was lined with shelves of leather-bound books and framed photographs. On the desk lay a locked drawer, but her eyes were drawn to a portrait above the fireplace. It was of a young woman, beautiful, with Isabella's same blue eyes. Her mother. Suddenly, the faintest whisper flickered in Isabella's mind. It wasn't her father's. It wasn't anyone's. It was distant, almost echoing, yet unmistakably real. Find me. Isabella froze, her heart pounding. Her mother's voice. The mystery was only beginning to unravel. Isabella clutched the edge of the desk, her breath shallow. The echo of her mother's voice, find me, lingered in her mind like a haunting melody. For years she had believed her mother was gone, claimed by illness when she was an infant. But now, with her newfound gift, Isabella couldn't shake the certainty, her mother was alive. The thought consumed her. She began combing through her father's study night after night. Locked drawers, sealed envelopes, cryptic financial records, all hinted at secrets carefully buried. She found documents tied to remote properties, bank accounts in her mother's name, and letters signed only with the initial, E. One evening, while her father attended a late meeting, Isabella discovered an old leather journal hidden beneath the false bottom of a drawer. Its pages were filled with her mother's handwriting. The entries painted a portrait of a woman who had been both brilliant and troubled, obsessed with alchemy, rare plants, and the pursuit of awakening hidden potential. The final entry stopped Isabella cold. They do not understand. My work is dangerous, but necessary. If they find me, I will vanish. My daughter is the key. One day she will awaken. One day, she will hear me. Isabella's hands shook. The mysterious vial, the awakening of her voice, the ability to hear thoughts, this was her mother's doing. But how, and where was she now? The very next day, Isabella confronted her father. Father, she said firmly, her voice stronger with each passing day. Tell me the truth about mother. Harold froze, his glass of scotch halfway to his lips. He tried to compose himself, but she heard the flicker of panic in his thoughts. She knows too much. Her eyes narrowed. Don't lie to me. I can hear you. The color drained from his face. You can hear my thoughts. Yes, she said, and I know you've been hiding her from me. Harold sank into his chair, defeated. For a long moment, he was silent. Finally, he whispered, you weren't supposed to find out this way. He told her everything. Her mother, Eleanor, had been a gifted scientist dabbling in forbidden experiments, alchemy, potions, and knowledge that straddled the line between science and sorcery. When Isabella was born mute, Eleanor became convinced that her daughter carried within her a dormant gift, something extraordinary. But her research grew erratic, dangerous. Fearing for Isabella's safety, Harold forced Eleanor into hiding, telling the world she had died. She didn't want to leave you, Harold said, his eyes wet. But she believed that one day, when the time was right, you would awaken. She left behind her work, and apparently, that vial you found. Isabella's heart twisted. Her entire life had been a carefully constructed lie. Yet instead of anger, she felt a strange clarity. She now understood. The potion had been her mother's creation. The voice in her mind hadn't been an illusion. It was a call. I have to find her, Isabella whispered. Harold shook his head. It's too dangerous. Eleanor isn't the same woman she once was. If her obsession has grown. But Isabella cut him off, her voice resonating with newfound strength. I was silent my whole life. Not anymore. I will find her. Guided by the whispers in her mind, Isabella traveled in secret. With her father's reluctant help, she traced Eleanor's trail to a secluded estate deep in the mountains, hidden from the world. The path was treacherous, but Isabella pressed on, her heart pounding with every step. At last, she reached a stone cottage covered in ivy. Smoke curled from the chimney. The air smelled faintly of herbs and ash. Isabella pushed the door open. Inside, hunched over a table cluttered with vials and scrolls, was a woman with silver-streaked hair and piercing blue eyes, the mirror of Isabella's own. The woman turned slowly. Tears welled instantly in both their eyes. Mother, Isabella whispered. Eleanor dropped the vial she was holding, shattering it. Across the floor, she stumbled forward, trembling. Isabella. Her voice cracked with disbelief. You spoke. For a moment, they simply embraced, mother and daughter reunited after decades apart. But soon Eleanor pulled back, studying her. You drank it, didn't you? The elixir. You've awakened. Yes, Isabella said. I can speak. I can hear thoughts. And I heard you calling me. Eleanor's eyes darkened. Then you must be careful. The gift is powerful, but it is also a curse. The voices will not always be kind. Some will drive you mad if you let them. But you, my daughter, you were meant for this. You are the culmination of my life's work. Isabella felt both awe and dread. But why hide from me all these years? Eleanor's gaze softened. Because the world isn't ready for what you are. And neither were you, until now. For days, Isabella stayed with her mother, learning. Eleanor taught her to control the voices, to filter the chaos, to use her gift with discipline. Isabella discovered she could not only hear thoughts but influence them, nudge emotions, calm fears, even plant ideas. But she also saw the toll it had taken on Eleanor. Her mother's obsession had cost her everything, her marriage, her freedom, her sanity. Isabella vowed she would not follow the same path. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Isabella spoke with a clarity she had never known. Mother, I will use this gift, not for control, not for obsession, but to heal. To bring light where there is silence. Eleanor smiled, tears glistening. You are wiser than I ever was. When Isabella returned to Crestwood Hills, she was not the same girl who had once lived in silence. She walked into the mansion with her head high, her voice strong, her spirit unshakable. Harold embraced her, relief flooding his features. From that day forward, Isabella dedicated her life to helping others. She used her voice to advocate for the voiceless, her gift to soothe the broken and expose the corrupt. The world saw her not just as the millionaire's daughter, but as a beacon of hope, a young woman who had risen from silence to power. And though she kept the secret of the mysterious elixir hidden, she carried within her the eternal truth her mother had given her. Some gifts are not curses at all. They are callings. And Isabella Kingsley was finally ready to answer hers.